Let's talk about the AFC South, starting
Mm.
off with Indianapolis, minus 140. Clearly the favorites to win this division. Came up a little short last year, came down to the last game of the season. They, basically blame Carson Wentz for that, shipped him out of town. Now we have a fresh start, right? So this team's the favorite, and I think that's probably where they should be. With Tennessee taking a step back, but the conversation is going to be Tennessee and Indianapolis. What are your thoughts on Indianapolis?
Yeah, they're the favorite to win the division. This line is a little more favorable to them than I would like because I think they still have to prove it. When you change quarterbacks, you bring in a veteran. I really like Matt Ryan for this team, but there's still some to be proven there. And remind me again, who was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year? Yeah, it was their opponents, the Tennessee Titans. So it's tough to say that this bet screams take it for me. But when I think about Indy, I do think they are the favorites to win the division for a reason, starting with their head coach and how the organization is run now, and how respected that roster and what they can do is. But to me, they still have stuff to prove. So that's what I think is the big goal for them this season. Prove what you're capable of, live up to what you're capable of. We're picking you to win the division, Vegas, and now let's see you do it, right? So minus
Right.
140, probably not a bet I'm excited to take because the odds are not well in my favor. And I do think Tennessee can contend with them. And if Indy sees some of those same bumps along the way, Tennessee could take advantage of that. So we'll not super excited for this bet, but not a terrible one either.
Right. And you bring up a good point with Tennessee. I mean, really, we like to think they took a step back, but really, one bad pass in the playoffs changes everything for them. Derrick Henry's coming back healthy. So the storyline for Indianapolis is definitely the quarterback. And with Carson Wentz out, Matt Ryan comes in, who I think is a huge improvement. And I'm not just saying I respect Carson Wentz, but Matt Ryan's on a different level. We were just talking about we missed 3 games in his entire career.
That's
in Atlanta.
remarkable.
It really is remarkable. And, if you think about it, he's been playing since, 2008. That's just an impressive stat line. Won an MVP before, been to the big game. It just screams stability. And that's kind of what Frank Reich is looking for, it seems like. So can Matt Ryan put this team over the top and into a new category and make them a true competitor in the AFC?
Yeah, so there's things I like and don't like about this. What I do like about this, Matt Ryan is a very capable quarterback. I think he is a guy you want in your room no matter what when you're trying to take that next step. Even at this point in his career, when sure he's more at the tail end as a older veteran. But this team is built around Jonathan Taylor on offense, right? They are a running team, and they have the best running back in the NFL last year, at least, when their divisional opponent Henry was injured. So Taylor has a lot of talent and can carry this team, and we've seen him do that. Now you add Matt Ryan in the mix, he can help them in the passing game. And when was Matt Ryan at his best? When he had a running back who could actually, was a threat to do things as well. And I think that this will help Matt Ryan in a lot of ways too. What I am a little more worried about is the weapons for the wide receiver core. Michael Pittman Jr., he had a lot of high expectations last year, didn't necessarily live up to that, but I do think he's a very talented guy. And then you got Paris Campbell and Alec Pierce, not exactly super exciting receiving targets, but the idea for them is that Matt Ryan can get the most out of them because he is that very experienced quarterback who can be accurate and make the right decisions and somebody you can trust right away to run this offense. I do like Mo Alley Cox at tight end. He's been there for a few years in backup roles. Now he's going to be the number 1 starting guy. And with a veteran quarterback, it's always important to say, can you protect him and keep him from getting hit a lot? I like this offensive line, and with Jonathan Taylor again, that takes the pressure off of Matt Ryan. So a little bit to worry about here with this team, which is probably why I'm not jumping on the bet super excitedly, even though they're the favorites to win the division.
Right. Matt Ryan now going to be 37 years old this year, pushing, 60,000 career passing yards.
That's insane.
You just have, we talk about this stuff, and maybe Tom Brady changed the whole dynamic of the aging quarterback, but Do you think he has enough in the tank to make a playoff run? And be a Super Bowl contender out of the AFC. The run game certainly works to Matt Ryan's advantage. Being able to work that play action game is going to be a huge advantage for Matt Ryan with his limited mobility. I think there's a lot to like here. And I really do think Matt Ryan can put this team over the top. We just need everyone to stay healthy, as obviously. And then the defense, I think, needs to step up like they have been. This defense is one of the better units in the league, but they gotta, do their part as well. So with that, they bring on Stephon Gilmore, comes to the team. Now, is this the best cornerback tandem in the whole league?
I don't know. I wouldn't probably go that far. I think there's a few other guys, at full strength when they're healthy, could match up well with this. It's a good one. There's no doubt about that. If Gilmore can be Gilmore, right? Gilmore we expect
and
of
Gilmore
him and stay healthy.
When he pairs with Kenny Moore,
yes, definitely Gilmore's used to being the most talented guy in the backfield. Now he's got somebody who can hang with him a little bit, and that takes a little bit of pressure off of him, which I'm sure will help his game as well. So do I like this defense or this cornerbacks? Absolutely, I think they are. Need to be respected in a way. Calling them the best, I want to see it again. I think the theme here for Indy is, you got to prove it now. Yes. And they have other guys on this defense too. Kwity Paye is somebody I want to see take a step this year and really, show that he's capable of leading a defense. Yannick Ngakoue is on this defense. And although they've been good, now is this a team you think about relying on the defense to win? No, but they play decent defense. So I'm interested to see, again, can they take that next step? That's the theme with this team.
Right. We haven't even mentioned the two cornerstone pieces, DeForest Buckner at defensive tackle, and then Shaquille, previously Darius Leonard, wants to go by Shaquille, which is his middle name now, inside linebacker. This unit, when you start adding up the stars, I think they could take a step this year and be better than what they played last year. Again, adding to this team, making them competitive. I like what they have on paper. Now we just got to put it all together, right? So that leads us into our over-under for Indianapolis at 9.5. What's your initial thoughts on 9.5?
Yeah, this is another great move by Vegas, I think, because it makes me think about it, right? Because I look at this schedule and I think, wow, they have this division. I haven't even mentioned that. This division, to me, is the weakest in the AFC. I do not like the bottom half of this division, as we'll see in a minute here. But you look at the opponents for the Colts in the first few games of the season, they play Houston, which is a game I expect them to win. Jacksonville, of course, I expect them to win. Kansas City and Tennessee, those are two big challenges right away. Then you go into Denver. Then you play, Jacksonville again, Tennessee again, of course. Commanders, Patriots, maybe. But there's competitive teams down at the end here, or middle half of the end, I guess. The Vegas Raiders, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Steelers, who we expect to be competing for a playoff spot, the Cowboys, who are always electric on offense, the Vikings, the Chargers, and the Giants weaker at the end, and the Tennessee. So the last two games are winnable. It's so close. I'm right at 9 to 10 wins for them, which is why I tend to lean toward the under. I'm going to take the under here and stick at 9 wins, but I wouldn't be favoring this bet heavily, right? I'm not putting a lot of money on this one just because when I look at the schedule, there's a lot of questions that come to mind. So I probably have them at 9 wins, and I think this is a great line by Vegas because it definitely made me think.
For sure. And it really comes, like we said in the beginning, comes down to Tennessee or Indianapolis. Those two games in week 7 and week 4.
Yeah.
Indianapolis has
Pretty
the week
close.
4 matchup. They're in Tennessee, the week 7 matchup. So those two games are very, very important. But really what I like about the Colts is their schedule and their path, right? Your first 2 weeks, you're at Houston, you're at Jacksonville, 2 very winnable games, division games. You could be 2-0 in the division by week 3. with that 2-0 record with momentum going into or at home versus Kansas City week 3. If you can knock off Kansas City, which I think this team could beat Kansas City week 3, that's a fun matchup as well. You have momentum to beat Tennessee, and not to mention, down the stretch, they have a late bye week 14, and then at Minnesota, Chargers, at the New York Giants, and then you finish with Houston. I like the road to the playoffs, so I will go over 9.5 for the Indianapolis Colts. I think they're a 10-11 win team this year.
Okay. Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me. Again, I have them rated at 9 to 10, so not exactly a safe bet here if you're going over or under, because it is somewhere right around there, I would imagine, for this team.
For sure. So let's move on to the other team that is in the conversation to win the division, and that's Tennessee at plus 180. Vegas not doing them any favors this year. You'd think the Colts and Titans line would be closer than it is. But plus 180 for Tennessee. Derrick Henry's back healthy. The big story out of there is the quarterback play. What's going to happen with Malik Willis? But I think this team's well coached. This team, they were the number 1 seed last year. You can't ignore that fact. And again, I think 4 wins in the division with Jacksonville and Houston. Really, for me, can Derrick Henry stay healthy is the biggest thing. What's your initial thoughts on the line for the Titans?
I like this bet for a lot of reasons, and mainly because the Titans proved last year that they lost their key piece, the best player they have in Derrick Henry, one of the best players in the NFL, and they didn't seem to skip a beat. They won the AFC in the regular season. They were the number 1 seed. Very, very huge accomplishment considering the circumstances. So I'm not going to count them out of anything. And now you're telling me I can make a little bit on my investment if I bet on Tennessee to win the division. Am I putting my house on this bet? No. But am I putting a little bit of money down? Absolutely. I like this because there is a return on my investment if I pick Tennessee to win the division, which is something, again, when you're weighing the probability of that happening versus how much you can get back for this return, that tends to weigh in the favor here of putting a little bit down. So I do like this line for Tennessee, and I would put some down at plus 180. There's a lot of like about this team. They've continued to do it. They have their star back. Do I love their quarterback in Ryan Tannehill? No. And we'll get into that in a little bit here as well. But they lost, obviously, huge storyline, AJ Brown getting traded.
Good point.
And now what does that mean for this receiving core? But you're talking about a team that doesn't rely as heavy on its receiving core. And they brought in guys that I think can at least manage that. You're not going to live up to the expectations of AJ Brown, but you're going to manage that passing game still while you're riding the back of Derrick Henry, quite literally.
For sure. And Derrick Henry, he gets sidelined week 9 with injury, hasn't played since then, but still pushing 1,000 yards in just 8 weeks.
Yeah.
937. The guy's talent. He had 10 touchdowns already. The guy was going to break some records this year or last year, but then the injury cuts him short. But knowing what I know about Derrick Henry, he's going to put the work in. He's going to come back and be a threat. You mentioned AJ Brown headed off to the Eagles. They replaced him with Robert Woods and rookie draft pick Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. Can they fill that gap? I love Robert Woods as a receiver. He's great at run blocking is a big thing for him out of the receiving core. You can get that short to underneath stuff, which I like. And there's a lot of question marks on Treylon Burks. Can he step up and fill that role? That remains to be seen. But definitely high expectations for those two guys. And, with Derrick Henry back, what do we need to see from Derrick Henry to carry this team?
Yeah. Health. I think that's the biggest thing. He has to stay healthy. And when you talk about running backs, the norm is when you ride a running back too much, he dies out in a couple of years, right? Derrick Henry has persevered through that throughout his career until last season, right? He was all the way the last few years. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to have a fall off. He's going to have a fall off. And he continued to dominate the NFL. Last year, he was the best player by far. And then he got injured, and then We see him, this is the first he's had to rebound after a major injury, but I do think he will return to form. And if he can stay healthy and continue to have that endurance that he's had and carry the rock 200 plus times and still be viable come playoff time, this team is going to be in good shape. That's for sure, because he is that talented that he can be the guy to carry your team.
Right. There's just few answers for a guy like that. So, let's move on to the quarterback conversation, because I think this is a huge topic in Tennessee. We've seen a lot of Malik Willis in the preseason, and the last thing we saw from Ryan Tannehill kind of left a sour taste in our mouth from the playoff game. The last play was an interception. So They draft Malik Willis in the 3rd round. Do you think this is a Russell Wilson scenario, or do you think Malik Willis sits? Will we see Malik Willis this year?
I would not be surprised if we see Malik Willis this year, and I'll tell you why. Well, mainly because they have new weapons for Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has always, in my mind, been an okay quarterback, right? I don't see him as elite. I don't see him as super talented. He is okay. He can lead your team. He can get you the wins. He can do what needs to be done, but he's not a franchise changing quarterback by any means. Malik Willis has shown flashes already of being that guy. So there's going to be calls to say, why don't we put this guy in there and see if he can take us to the next level and see if he can utilize these tools even better? This is a similar situation that we talked about when we did our analysis of Pittsburgh, right? You had Mitch Trubisky and a young quarterback who's contending there. Same thing here. You have Ryan Tannehill. The leash is going to be short. You mess up, you throw one interception to lose a game, even though your team has a winning record, the chains are coming out. They're going to pull you and put in Malik Willis and see what he can do. And then if he falls, maybe they put Ryan Tannehill back in. But I do think that just because of what flashes we've seen already and the potential that he has to change this franchise to take the next level that Ryan Tannehill doesn't, Ryan Tannehill can maintain it. Malik Willis could probably bring it up if it can have that opportunity. So I do expect to see him at some point in this year starting in games, just so that they can see which quarterback should we go with when the time comes, if we're making the playoffs.
Interesting. Well, Ryan Tannehill, 2 years left on his deal, on the hook for $38.6 million. The Titans are on the hook this year for Ryan Tannehill. His contract does go through 2023 as well. So that's an interesting dynamic. Probably the way out of that's a trade. But I think personally, you see Ryan Tannehill plays the entire season. I think Malik Willis needs more time to develop the passing game. He's a phenomenal talent in the run game. He has all the physical abilities to be successful in the passing game. I just don't think he was asked to do that a lot in college. So I think that needs to develop. And when you look at quarterbacks like Trey Lance, who's still, we're waiting to see, or Pat Mahomes sitting for a year, I think Malik Willis would really benefit from sitting on the bench an entire season, watch Ryan Tannehill go through it. I think in the first few games, Titans fans will start to forget about the interception in the playoffs. And like I said, winning cures all, right? Having Derrick Henry takes the pressure off Ryan Tannehill. Get back to that play action game. Like I said, I like Robert Woods. I like Treylon Burks as a prospect. I think they can do a lot there. So I think Ryan Tannehill does finish out the season. We'll see Malik Willis next year. All right, so over under in Tennessee, 9.5, same as the Colts. What's your thoughts on 9.5?
Yeah, again, this is pretty tempting either way. I'm not super excited about this because I do have Tennessee right around 9 exactly again. Neither team, Indy or Tennessee, is blowing me out of the water to get me excited to bet the over. And when you look at their schedule, you can see that there's some up and down times here. The Giants opening, I expect them to win that game. Buffalo, I think that's a loss. Vegas could go either way for them. Indy is really the make or breaks that we've talked about. Washington, I expect that to be a win. Houston, the bottom of this division, they should be able to beat. Kansas City is going to be a competitive game. Denver. I actually think this schedule leans more in both. If you compare Indy's schedule and Tennessee's schedule, I think that schedules lean more in favor of Tennessee here. So you could take the over and say they're going to win the division. And again, I like that division bet for Tennessee a little more. But I'm right at 9, so I'm avoiding betting this. But again, if I had to choose, I'd probably pick the under and stay right at 9.
Yeah, and I wonder if the quarterback thing is a distraction. Like, does half the locker room want Malik Willis? Did they see what he does at practice? I think if you just watch the guy's athletic ability, that may split the room for the Titans. So I'm going to take the under here. I think they're an 8 or 9 win team. I would not be shocked if they get to 10 or 11. I just like the Colts. I think the Colts win those games. I like Matt Ryan. I'll take Matt Ryan over Ryan Tannehill. So I'm going to go under on Tennessee.
Okay.
All right, moving on to Jacksonville, plus 800. Again, we're trying to get out of this rebuild. Seems like they got the quarterback. A lot more remains to be seen. Got a couple key players coming back from injury. Travis Etienne comes to mind there. A lot of changes. Laviska Shenault goes to Carolina. We got Zay Jones, Christian Kirk now on the roster. New coach and Doug Pederson and company. What's your initial thoughts on the line for Jacksonville?
It looks tempting when you see plus 800 always, that your eyes would be like, oh, hey, that looks like something that I could get a big return on investment. But we're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars here. And until they prove they can truly play in the NFL and compete with the teams in the NFL that are in the NFL, because at times they've seen more not worthy of being so, I would not touch this bet with a 10-foot pole, and it's plus 800 for a reason, right? So I just don't believe there's a capability of this team exceeding those expectations and winning the division. I would certainly be among those who is completely shocked if they were able to take that next step and overcome not only the rest of their opponents, but just the 2 divisional opponents ahead of them in Tennessee and Indy, prevent a ton of challenges that I think Jacksonville just does not match up well against. So not excited about this one.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they're still in rebuild mode. There's a lot more to be seen. Even though the line is relatively friendly compared to other teams we've seen, which we'll get to with Houston, I don't like the bet. I don't think they win year one. I think they're still a couple years out, but it remains to be seen on that front. But the first thing is the new regime in Doug Pederson. We get Taylor on the offensive side and Caldwell on the defensive side. Guys who've played. I know Taylor's played with Doug Pederson. I'm not too sure about Caldwell, but new faces, new schemes. It seems like new roster. How do you feel about the new coaching staff in Jacksonville?
I think finally Jacksonville is in the right mentality for a rebuild, right? They finally have the right coach, the right staff. They're starting to build in the right direction. Obviously, you have Trevor Lawrence. And the big thing that this new GM and coach did was make it rain, right? They threw money out there. They just wads and wads of money at players, right? They said, we've got lots of cap to spend. We're going to do it to try and compete now. Now, do I necessarily like the guys they paid? Not as much as they paid them. Christian Kirk, very good wide receiver. I think he was a great wide receiver 3 option. He suddenly becomes almost your wide receiver 1 on this team next to Marvin Jones Jr. And Zay Jones, who you paid money to. I mean, is he worthy of getting a contract? Sure. Would he be a good addition to the team? Sure. Did they have to pay him wads and wads of money just to show up? Yeah. So that's a little bit concerning for me. Evan Ingram, another one facing injury concerns. And, has he ever lived up to the potential? No. But he's brought in, right? So lots and lots of new faces to go with this new regime. And the defense totally looks a little bit more like it's building in the right direction. You still have your cornerstones, Josh Allen, the defensive Josh Allen. They brought in Trayvon Walker with the first pick. They have pieces I really like in Devin Lloyd and Andre Sisco, young players. They brought in Shaq Griffin. So they paid people to come in and balance this young rebuilding roster, which is an ideal thing to do. You want to have a balance of veterans and young guys in order to keep that locker room stable. But they certainly had to overpay to do so, and overpaid maybe not for the level of talent that they should have gotten at that price.
Right. I think that's well said. But, as everyone knows, it comes down to Trevor Lawrence. The guy's been on Sports Illustrated when he was 14 years old. So it seems like he's been a franchise quarterback for a long time. but we really haven't seen that transition to the NFL yet. Saw some struggles last year. Wasn't really bad. Just want to see more from a guy with as much hype as he's had.
Yes.
Especially being the number 1 overall pick. Trevor Lawrence, second-year jump. Most quarterbacks make a big jump from year 1 to year 2. I think having Travis Etienne healthy makes Trevor Lawrence more comfortable. Comes over from Clemson, right? They run a lot of that, those passing schemes out of the backfield. We saw a lot of that in the preseason. I think that will help Trevor Lawrence's development a ton. Not to mention bringing in players like Evan Ingram, Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. These are players that have been around the league. They kind of understand what to expect. Maybe can help out Trevor Lawrence in the drawing up the schemes and running certain passing concepts. So I do like the tools that Trevor Lawrence has now. The big thing is got to stay healthy, number 1, and number 2, got to start winning some games at some point, right?
Yeah, I think for those who have listened to our content throughout the years, they've probably caught on to this when it comes to me, but I am not a hype guy, right? I do not like players who come in with all the hype. Show me, prove it to me, show me what you can do, right? And an excellent example of that is Baker Mayfield coming in as the number 1 overall pick, who is somebody I just don't like, right? He's not my kind of quarterback. I don't like his attitude. I don't like the way he plays. Trevor Lawrence, although I have nothing against him personally, you have to show it at the NFL level now. You were not the first overall pick just because you were the best player in that class. Trevor Lawrence was talked about as the best player ever drafted at number 1 overall, and that's insane to me before he ever took an NFL snap. So while I trust the experts of the, NFL and scouts and saying that he's got the most talent and he looks the best of anybody we've ever seen and the highest grades of anybody on planet Earth or Mars or anywhere else, great. But when you come in and you have the performance that you did last year, and you could put the blame everywhere else, the coaching staff was ridiculous. The receivers weren't doing what they could do. You had injuries at running back. But still, I don't care. If you're that talented and you are that guy, then do it. And I would contrast that with a guy like Josh Allen from our favorite team, the Buffalo Bills, who came in with some hype. Don't get me wrong, he's a top 10 pick, but he had to earn it, and he did it on bad teams, and he improved year after year after year. I am off of the hype train, and I'm sorry, but Trevor Lawrence needs to prove it. You're supposed to be walking on water, the god of football, and you looked pathetic last year. And I'm sorry to say it. He was not fun to watch. He did not make the games exciting. Where is it with him? You have got to show me. And I have just not seen that. And until I do, I am not a believer.
Right. And he's definitely in that conversation of hyped quarterback, the Peyton Mannings, the Andrew Lucks.
Yeah.
I would argue that Andrew Luck's probably the best quarterback to ever be drafted, coming out of college.
Sure.
But he's in that conversation, and that's what you get when you're a famous prospect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like those guys, they had high expectations to perform well in year 2, and they answered the call.
Exactly.
Right? Andrew Luck ends up getting to the championship game, literally with no talent either. He carries the team for a number of years. Peyton Manning figured out his game, kind of feeling it out. Hey, I'm an intellectual player. I'm not so much a physically talented player at this level. What is Trevor Lawrence? That remains to be seen. I expect him to at least show us who you are as a pro quarterback this year. And that's identity. Start to figure it out. I'd like to see this team start to make a run late in the season. That would give me reassurance that Trevor Lawrence was not a mistake.
Just make it exciting to watch, right? Make the football enjoyable at least. That's the minimal I ask. And I just haven't seen that.
Fair. And I think that's a fair assessment. Jacksonville over under 6.5.
Yeah, well,
schedule here.
If you can't tell by my excitement already here, I'm going the under, and I think definitely the under on this one. I do like this bet. I would take the under. I just look at this schedule and I say, are there winnable games for them? Yes. Do I think that they could take the next step? Yes. But for this franchise, after a chaotic and crazy year last year, there minimal expectations in terms of what you are capable of doing and what it is to take that next step. So while I think it could still be a positive year for them, at best, I see 5 wins. I don't even see 7. So, although there's weak opponents like Washington, although I still think they're going to lose week 1 against Washington. I would take Washington in that game. The Texans, are they or aren't they a better team? We're going to talk about them next, but I'm more excited at least about the talent on the Texans than I am, I'm more excited about that talent than I am unsure about the talent here. So the Lions may be a winnable game, but you never know there either. I just don't see it. So I'm under hard on this one. I do
way under. Okay. All right. Like I said, I think Jacksonville, the defense showed us a lot last year. They can be capable of a top unit, right? They have that kind of potential. You saw flashes of that last season. Will they get there? I think, like I said, I want to see a run late in the year from Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, with this defense starting to form, continue to form that identity of who you are as a team, and then start to win some games you're not supposed to win, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want to see from any potential. I think Dallas late in the year, Tennessee late in the year are winnable games for Jacksonville. That would show me a lot. And then, with Detroit and the Texans, after the bye week as well, those would be winnable. I think they have a winning record after the bye week going into next year.
What? Okay.
No, not a winning record, but I mean after the
bye. So Baltimore,
right. Let's say
Lions, Tennessee, Dallas.
Right. Let's say they go 5-2 after the bye. That's momentum going into next season.
If they go 5-2 after the bye, then they'll be one of the hottest teams to watch in football for sure. Because that's not an easy schedule there to win 5 games, even with the Lions and Jets and Houston in there. I don't think that's an easy stretch.
Oh, I don't think it is either. But when you have a defense like Jacksonville does, and they made Buffalo look silly last year, and you have a top quarterback, this is what the expectation is. You want to put it together late in the year, in year 2 of the quarterback's career. You got to start putting it together. So I think they have the coach. They have all the pieces. I'm giving you the first season to lose some games before I start criticizing, but the second half of the season, you got to see some stuff. So I'll take the under. I don't think they get over, but I think they're about a 6-win team. Would not be shocked if they go higher, but I would not bet it.
Jacksonville gonna Jacksonville. That's all I'm saying.
Speaking of Jacksonville going to Jacksonville, let's move on to Houston at plus 3,000.
This bet it's
interesting
just
bet for sure.
Exciting here. I mean, 3,000 jumps off the page. That's for sure. But we have to realize where this franchise is at this point in their lifespan, and I just don't know that I would take that bet. If I had a spare dollar, would I put it on there? Sure, because I love that payoff, but I just don't think it's a reasonable one to take, given that the top 2 teams are as good as they are, and even if they falter, we'll probably still be able to beat these lower teams in the division. So don't like them to win the division, but I really like this roster that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, you like Houston's roster. Interesting. Well, I guess the first question is Davis Mills the guy? I have so many question marks for this team that I don't really know what to say about the odds. I think they're probably right? Plus 3,000. I think everyone's expecting them to be bad. I think they're in the conversation for top pick next year, top 5 pick in the draft next year. But really, is Davis Mills the guy is the first question I have. Showed some flashes like a lot of guys do, but I think he did enough last season to get the start this season. And that's exactly where they're at. A lot remains to be seen. Guy puts his neck out there. Gotta respect that.
But
had to get what are your thoughts on Davis Mills and really this offense as a whole? Added some pieces at running back with Damian Pierce. Brandon Cook's still a productive receiver. I think there's a lot to some pieces here.
I think
they put it together.
When I say I like this roster, I'll give you a number of reasons why, right? They are a rebuilding team, don't get me wrong, but Davis Mills is being given the opportunity to show that you can be our franchise quarterback. And that's all a young quarterback can ask for. Any other team you talked about, Tennessee, that's what they want, right? They want to give that kid the opportunity to show that you can be the guy to lead this team. And Davis Mills is being given that. Expectations are still low. Nobody is expecting Houston to win the division. If they did that, the NFL will faint, because that is crazy right now. If they make the playoffs, that would be insane, right now. But if we go up and down this roster, you have Davis Mills at quarterback, obviously, Brandon Cooks, who is a potential Pro Bowl wide receiver, no matter who's throwing him the ball. Nico Collins, I really am high on. I like him as a younger building wide receiver, especially next to Brandon Cooks. I have always been a Brevin Jordan stan, a first guy right here. And last year, he really turned it on at the end of the year and was ahead of schedule in terms of tight end development to come on that quickly. However, I think he can be the guy at an elite tight end at the level of the top tight ends once he grows and develops into an NFL vet here. And so I really like him. The offensive line is a question at times. So that is something to be aware of. But the offense is exciting to watch. This team, in my mind, is more exciting to watch than Jacksonville last year. Right? So Jacksonville has more to prove with the roster they have now than Houston. Houston is fun to watch. Do I expect them to win a lot of games with this roster? No, not at all. Their defense, although they have improved as well, when we're going to talk about that, it's not going to carry this team to where the offense can just, maintain its level. And I think that's what eventually will hold them back, especially against their divisional opponents.
Right. I think with a young quarterback at any level, you got to play good defense, got to figure out how to move the football. Hopefully in the run game takes the pressure off the quarterback. I don't think Davis Mills is a guy you can put a lot on, but then again, he proved us wrong last year. Would not be shocked if he comes out, can handle the load, looks confident, looks comfortable. So maybe he is the franchise guy. All we know now is he's done enough to earn the starting job this year. If they get over 4 wins, I think that's a success, but I expect them to be under. So I think they're looking at next year's draft at maybe a quarterback, right? New and improved defense, though, I do think with Lovie Smith, a proven defensive mind in the league, there's a lot of pieces on this defense to like Malik Collins. They add Jerry Hughes from Buffalo. They add Mario Addison from Buffalo.
Yeah.
Just a lot to like there. Christian Kirksey, Ruger Hill for outside linebacker. I think there's a lot of pieces. They draft Derrick Stingley Jr. with the number 3 overall pick. Desmond King on the other side, MJ Stewart. There's just a lot of names to like here. Can Lovie Smith put it all together? It just seems like a very experienced defensive roster. In this NFL, I think experience goes a long way compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, I think Lovie Smith did a great job of assembling what he could for this defense. Ideally, would he want younger players who are more in their prime than, say, Jerry Hughes? Certainly. But Jerry Hughes is very capable still. We saw him do it in Buffalo. Pressures on the quarterback. He wasn't great at putting up the stat sheet with sacks, but pressures. And what is he above all else? A leader on the defense. And that is what they needed here. An anchor, a guy like that, a veteran presence. Mario Addison, I would put in that same category. Capable, right? That's what they need. Trustworthy, capable guys to go with some of this young talent. And Stingley is the first one I'm going to be watching on this defense, right? I want to see what he can do against top level wide receivers in this league. And the rest of this defense carried by Lovie Smith, you put the trust in him that he's going to put a defense worthy of, playing football out there. He's going to maximize the talent of these players on defense. We know that's what Lovie Smith is capable of. So I fully expect that to be the minimum. And again, am I going overboard and saying that this means this defense is going to be able to shut out the Colts and the Titans? No, I don't truly believe that. Can they compete? Are they going to be closer in games than people think? I absolutely will, and I'll hold to that during the season.
Well said. Yeah, I think that was a good analysis. Over under Houston 4.5.
So all of the great things I said, all of them, I'm high on this team.
Put your money where your mouth is. Right?
I want to watch this team. But when we pull up the schedule and the bottom line, you look at the bottom lines here. I mean, this is just Indy, Denver, Chicago, maybe a winnable game for them, but I don't know. Jacksonville, yeah, that's another questionable one. I have them right at 4 wins. And so for me, I have to take the under here. I like this team. I think they're going to be exciting. I think they will be more competitive than anybody is giving them credit for. And they might still end up with the first pick in the NFL draft next year. which is a good place to be for a rebuilding franchise. You want to show promise and still get a top draft pick to add to what you've shown next year. So I think they're actually positioning themselves well to rebound, and moving on from the Deshaun Watson situation is going to be a big burden off of them. And, we're moving forward. We have our plan, and we're going from here.
Yeah, and I mean, we've given out tons of overs throughout our analysis in this series, and somebody has to take all the losses when you do that. So I will go under as well on Houston. I do think they're a candidate for a top 5 pick next year, which I think would benefit them. But you just want to see them move in the right direction. I don't think there's a clear direction right now. Maybe identity issues on the defensive team. What's going on with the quarterback? We don't have a lot of talent around the roster necessarily, but they're trying to figure that out. I just don't see a stacked AFC. I don't see a lot of games that I would choose them to win. So I'll go under. I think they're a 2 or 3 win team, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Agreed.
Feeling good about that, and I think Colts win it.
I don't know. Tennessee will give them a hard time. I think so. And this is going to be a fun division. Even though it's sucky, even though it's the worst division in the AFC, I do think they'll be competitive still.
Worse than the AFC East remains to be seen, but we'll be watching. Talk to you later.
Toss your hat in the ring.
There you go.